The courtroom was silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner struggling to keep up with the tension in the room. Judge Harold Thompson, a man with a reputation for being as stern as he was sarcastic, leaned back in his leather chair, his lips curling into a smirk. He had just finished laughing loudly, obnoxiously, at the woman standing before him. She was a black woman in her early 30s, dressed in a simple blazer and slacks. Her name was Agent Naomi Carter, though no one in the room knew that yet. To them, she was just another defendant in a sea of cases. But when Judge Thompson made a snide remark about her attitude and chuckled at her expense, Naomi didn't flinch. Instead, she reached in her pocket, pulled out a small badge, and held it up for the entire room to see. The badge gleamed under the fluorescent lights. It was a United States Secret Service badge. Judge Thompson froze mid-laugh, his face turning pale. The courtroom gasped. The bailiff dropped his pen. Even the stenographer stopped typing. Judge laughs at black woman in court, then freezes when she flashes her USSS badge. What happened next? Well, let's rewind a bit. It all started 2 days earlier, on a crisp October morning. Naomi Carter, a highly decorated Secret Service agent, was on a covert assignment in Columbus, Ohio. Her mission? To investigate a series of suspicious financial transactions linked to a local judge, none other than Judge Harold Thompson himself. Naomi had been undercover for weeks, posing as a small-time business owner caught up in a legal dispute. Her case had finally made it to Thompson's courtroom, and she was ready to see just how deep the corruption went. The morning of the hearing, Naomi arrived at the courthouse early. She wore a simple outfit, nothing flashy, and carried a small briefcase. She didn't look like a federal agent. She looked like someone who was about to lose everything. And that was the point. The courtroom was packed. Judge Thompson, a man in his late 50s with a receding hairline and a permanent scowl, entered with his usual air of superiority. He took his seat, adjusted his robe, and glanced at the docket. Case number 23 to 4567, he announced, his voice dripping with boredom. Naomi Carter versus Franklin County Business Bureau. Naomi stepped forward, her expression calm, but her mind racing. She knew this was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. The hearing began, and almost immediately, Judge Thompson made it clear he wasn't interested in fairness. He interrupted Naomi every time she tried to speak, dismissed her evidence without even looking at it, and even made a few offhand comments about her tone. "Miss Carter," he said at one point, leaning forward with a smirk, "you seem to think you're above the law. Let me remind you, this is my courtroom." Naomi clenched her fists but said nothing. She had a job to do, and losing her temper wasn't part of the plan. As the hearing dragged on, Judge Thompson grew more arrogant. He laughed at Naomi's arguments, mocked her demeanor, and even made a joke about her overconfidence. The courtroom chuckled nervously, but Naomi remained stone-faced. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Judge Thompson leaned back in his chair and said, "Miss Carter, I've heard enough. Your case is dismissed." Next, that's when Naomi made her move. She reached in her pocket, pulled out her badge, and held it up for everyone to see. The room fell silent. Judge Thompson's smirk vanished. "Your Honor," Naomi said, her voice steady but firm, "I'm Special Agent Naomi Carter with the United States Secret Service. And you, sir, are under investigation." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Thompson's face turned red, then white, then red again. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Naomi turned to the bailiff. "Please escort Judge Thompson to a holding room. He's not going anywhere." The bailiff hesitated, then nodded. He stepped forward, but before he could reach the judge, Thompson slammed his gavel on the desk. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "You can't do this." Naomi smiled. "Oh, I think you'll find that I can." And with that, the courtroom descended into chaos. The courtroom was in complete disarray. Judge Thompson's face was beet red as he slammed his gavel repeatedly, shouting, "Order! Order in the court!" But there was no order to be found. Reporters in the back were already on their phones, scrambling to break the story. Spectators whispered furiously to each other, and the bailiff stood frozen, unsure whether to obey the judge or the Secret Service agent who had just turned the room upside down. Naomi Carter, still holding her badge high, turned to the bailiff and said, "I need you to secure the room. No one leaves until I say so." The bailiff, a middle-aged man named Carl who had seen a lot in his 20 years on the job but nothing like this, nodded and moved to block the doors. Judge Thompson, however, wasn't having it. "This is my courtroom," he bellowed, standing up so fast his chair nearly toppled over. "You have no authority here, Agent Carter." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "Actually, Judge, I have every authority here. And if you don't sit down and comply, I'll have no choice but to add resisting a federal investigation to your growing list of problems." The judge hesitated, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape route. But there was none. Naomi had planned this moment meticulously, and she wasn't about to let him slip away. Rewind to 48 hours earlier, and you'd find Naomi in a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of Columbus, sipping coffee and reviewing case files. Her partner, Agent Marcus Reed, sat across from her, scrolling through his tablet. "You sure about this, Naomi?" Marcus asked, his deep voice tinged with concern. "Thompson's got friends in high places. If this goes sideways—" "It won't," Naomi interrupted, her tone firm. "We've got everything we need. Bank records, witness statements, even a few incriminating emails. Thompson's been taking bribes for years, and it's time someone held him accountable." Marcus sighed. "I just don't like the idea of you going in alone. What if he tries something?" Naomi smirked. "Then he'll regret it." Fast forward to the present, and it seemed Judge Thompson was indeed regretting a lot of things. Back in the courtroom, Naomi pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "This is Agent Carter. I need backup at the Franklin County Courthouse immediately. We got a situation." Judge Thompson's eyes widened. "You can't do this," he repeated, though his voice had lost some of its earlier bravado. "I already am," Naomi replied calmly. She turned to the spectators and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this hearing is adjourned. Please remain seated until further notice." The room buzzed with tension as everyone waited to see what would happen next. A few minutes later, the doors burst open, and a team of federal agents marched in, led by Marcus. He gave Naomi a quick nod before turning to Judge Thompson. "Harold Thompson," Marcus said, his voice booming, "you're under arrest for corruption, bribery, and obstruction of justice. You have the right to remain silent." The judge's shoulders slumped as Marcus continued reading him his rights. Naomi watched with a satisfied smile, but her work was far from over. As the agents escorted Judge Thompson out of the courtroom, Naomi turned to Marcus. "We need to secure his office and his home. There's no telling what else we'll find." Marcus nodded. "Already on it. But, Naomi, this is just the beginning. Thompson's not the only one involved in this mess." "I know," Naomi said, her expression serious. "And we're going to take them all down." Naomi Carter stood in the middle of Judge Thompson's office, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. The space was exactly what you'd expect from a man who thought he was untouchable. Ornate mahogany desk, leather chairs, and shelves lined with law books that looked like they'd never been opened. But Naomi wasn't interested in the decor. She was looking for something specific. "Anything yet?" Marcus asked, poking his head through the door. "Not yet," Naomi replied, kneeling to examine the bottom drawer of the desk. "But he's hiding something. I can feel it." Marcus stepped inside, holding a stack of files. "Well, we've got plenty of evidence from his computer. Emails, bank transfers, the works. But if you're looking for a smoking gun—" "I am," Naomi said, pulling the drawer open. Inside, she found a small lockbox. Bingo! She pulled a set of lockpicks from her pocket and went to work. Within seconds, the box clicked open. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten list of names. Naomi's eyes widened as she scanned the list. "Marcus," she said, holding it up. "We've got him. And we've got everyone else involved." Rewind to earlier that morning, and you'd find Naomi and Marcus strategizing in their makeshift command center. A cramped hotel room with a whiteboard covered in notes, photos, and red string. "Thompson's just the tip of the iceberg," Naomi had said, pointing to a photo of the judge. "He's been working with a network of corrupt officials, lawyers, and business owners. If we take him down, the whole thing could collapse. Or," Marcus countered, "they could close ranks and make our lives a living nightmare." Naomi smirked. That's why we need to move fast. Once Thompson's in custody, we hit his office and his home simultaneously. No warning, no room for error. And that's exactly what they did. Back in the present, Naomi plugged the flash drive into her laptop. The screen lit up with folders labeled with dates and names. She clicked on one, and her jaw dropped. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus leaned over her shoulder and let out a low whistle. "Holy, that's not just corruption. That's treason." The files contained evidence of Judge Thompson and his associates selling classified information to foreign agents. It was bigger than anyone had imagined. "We need to call this in," Marcus said, already reaching for his phone. Naomi nodded, but her mind was racing. This wasn't just about taking down a corrupt judge anymore. This was about national security. An hour later, the FBI had swarmed the courthouse. Judge Thompson's office was sealed off, and the flash drive was on its way to Washington, D.C. Naomi and Marcus stood outside, watching as the scene unfolded. "You did it," Marcus said, clapping Naomi on the back. "You took down one of the most powerful men in the state." "We did it," Naomi corrected him. "But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." Marcus sighed. "It never is it?" Naomi smiled. "Nope, but that's why we do what we do." Epilogue. 1 week later. The headlines were everywhere. Corrupt judge and associates arrested in major federal sting. Secret Service agent exposes treasonous plot. Naomi Carter, the woman who brought down a judge. Naomi, however, was back at her desk in D.C., already working on her next case. She didn't care about the fame or the accolades. For her, it was always about the job, about justice. As she sipped her coffee and opened a new file, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. "You ready for round 2? Naomi grinned and typed back. "Always."